Hey, everybody, we are live. This is John Gums, Dakota Grappler, coming to you on a Wednesday night, 8 o'clock. This is kind of our normal night, Wednesday nights for everybody. This is show 124. We've done this for a couple of years now, 3 years. Terry's been on before. It's the first time for Jordan Hasler. Do some introductions in a second, but I just want to tell everybody thank you for coming to Dakota Grappler. If our volume or anything is not quite right for you guys, turn it up. No, I'm just kidding. But you guys can make comments on the side. We're on both Facebook and on YouTube. This can be replayed. Many people come on later and watch this. This will all be transformed into a podcast, which is just your audio. You can find that over Anchor. You can find it quite a different few places, any of your normal podcast places. And that's pretty new for me. But like I said, make sure to make comments. Always, I tell you what, that really makes it interesting more, or the show more interesting is the best way to say it. I know we've had Jim McCoskey on many a times, and he makes great comments. Got a text he was on, Jeff Schumacher. I want to thank him again for coming on last week. We've had several coaches. I don't know, what is this, about our 10th show this year, Bill? Probably. Maybe a little more. But always have fun. This usually lasts, I try to keep it to an hour, but I think the last half dozen shows have been about an hour and a half. So bear with us. You guys can watch it. We're going to try to keep it as brief as possible. We get some great stories. Okay, so off to my left on the computer screen for you guys is Jordan Hasler. We have broadcasted the state wrestling tournament for several years. He is a great voice, classic guy. He goes back to Minot Ryan, but I'm going to let him introduce himself, tell us what he does, and then after that, we'll talk to everybody else. Jordan.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks for having me. Since back in 2006, been here at the Beck Sports Network. We started this business 14 years ago. Had the luxury of kind of being a part of it, all the way back since we started. So kind of the only one that was broadcasting wrestling in the state of North Dakota at the time, able to start to do some high school stuff. And now we have the rights back to be able to broadcast the state wrestling tournament on a yearly basis. So we're able to do both the Class A and Class B. We do a handful of Class B and Class A matches throughout the year. Did 5 duels last night. We have 4 more duels tomorrow in the abridged format, but some many issue stuff we do throughout the year. So, yeah, I've been North Dakota born, North Dakota raised, and been down at Bismarck here since 2003 at the University of Mary. And again, just kind of providing what we can here at the Beck Sports Network to broadcast somewhere between 375 and 400 live sporting events a year. So,
no, it's been awesome. I tell you what, you've brought all sports into the highlight. A lot of things that we've missed, and you guys have a great little niche there. I tell you what. And the main broadcasting center is out of Steele, North Dakota. Is that right? Or is that
we're actually in Bismarck now. So we started in Steele, and then we had our studios up in University of Mary, and now we have a brand new building here on Interstate Avenue, just south of or just north of the interstate. So can't miss it. Got a big brand new sign out in front, and we have four broadcast studios here, plus a television set on site as well. So yeah, everything happens out of our building right here on Interstate. So
that is awesome. Well, I tell you what, we'll talk a lot about what your experiences are with the sport and all sports and how you promote it so well. Because I tell you what, you're a great promoter for all sports, Jordan. Okay, so down in my bottom corner, of course, we know Bill from the last 2 shows if you've been around, but I'm going to talk to Terry Steiner first. Terry, longtime friend, known him since I was about 6 years old. We've wrestled many a times, and we've probably punched each other. We've probably bled on each other. And I would consider him probably in the wrestling community one of my better friends. I just love what he's doing for the sport. He has so many stories, so many aspects. So just first thing I'll ask you is tell everybody what you're doing now, and tell us in your heart, because I love your motivational speech, in your heart, what motivates you day by day for the sport of wrestling?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to the people of the Dakotas and reaching back to home folks. I've always been very appreciative of the opportunities I was given and the upbringing I had in the state of North Dakota, and that means a lot to me. And I'm always happy to give back. So, well, right now I'm like everyone else surviving COVID, right? I mean, trying to get through this pandemic and operate the best we can. I'm still the women's national team coach for USA Wrestling. I've been in this position now since 2002. And so, going into the 5th Olympic Games with USA Wrestling and the women's program, and feel very honored and privileged and happy to be in the position I'm in. And so what wakes me up on a day-to-day basis is the athletes in front of me. And I think that's really what coaching is all about, right? It's about the relationships and the people in front of you and helping them accomplish what they're trying to accomplish, right? And that's what it's about. And I don't think it goes much further than that. I mean, we have Olympic opportunities come around for not many people, and when they do come around, they don't come around often. Probably only once in a lifetime if they do. And so when you have athletes coming your way and they put themselves in a position to win a world or Olympic medal, you realize that you don't have an off day. You can't have just an average day. You have to try to make practice a gold medal day every day. And that's how things happen. So you have to be on, and that's a challenge. I was asked a question today. I was talking to a different group today, and they asked, like, how do you stay away from burnout? And I think it's a great question, because I think it's what a lot of kids and coaches and people in general, right? We go through times in our lives when it's not fun what we're doing, and it's not enjoyable what we're doing, but that's not what they asked, right? Nobody said this was going to be enjoyable. It's about excellence, and it's about success, and how do we get that? And nobody said it was going to be enjoyable. And I always bring it back to a family situation, right? And I say, how many of your parents do you think love you? And they said, well, I think my parents love me. I think my parents loved me too. That didn't mean they enjoyed me every day. But that was irrelevant. It didn't matter if they enjoyed me. Nobody asked them that question. They were there to provide opportunities for me and open doors and educate me to move forward in life so I could be successful. And that's really what wrestling is. It's getting yourself to the place every day where you can be the best that you can be. And that takes as much work as building physical strength or building technical strength or tactical strength. You've got to work on your motivation, because all burnout really is a lack of motivation, right? And a lack of a mindset. And sometimes that's hard to get to. You don't always wake up every day wanting to be a parent. You don't wake up every day wanting to be a coach and wanting to do the position that you do. And so you have to work on it. And sometimes that takes more effort some days than others. But if you're trying to be the best that you can be, you've got to find that place on a daily basis. You've got to find the passion in the everyday. And if you can do that, then success down the road can happen. But you can't be average today and tomorrow and the next day and then expect gold medals at the end of it, right? And so that's a challenge for all of us as a coach or a parent and an athlete alike. That's a challenge.
Man, I can clip that out right now and put that in my motivation stuff. No, Terry, awesome words to start off. Good job. I tell you what, I've got, many stories about you, but one of the first ones I can remember more than anything was how humble you were at a young age. You took things very seriously, but yet all the people you worked with, you gave Christmas cards to, and you guys, both you and your brother, thanked me, thanked everybody on the team for the aspect and the parts that they were playing the role in your life. And so that was something that always has touched me as a teammate of yours and a friend. Is that means more sometimes, those little things that people don't see, that guess what? Sometimes I think it's all about you, and your parents taught you right in that aspect of, if you don't guess what, you have to thank everybody else that's put you in that position. And you realize that later. Maybe, do you remember doing those?
I do. And I was blessed, right? I was blessed with great role models, and my parents, they were the best of the best, and they did things how I believe is the right way to do things, and they treated people right, And that was handed down, and maybe pressed down, and maybe we got disciplined if it wasn't done that way. But I'm not saying I always liked it, right? But there's a right and wrong way to do things, and I think treating people right is at the core of everything, right? I mean, you've got to treat people right, the people around you, the right way if you want the best out of them as well, right? And so I think it's very important, and what we do on a wrestling mat or off a wrestling mat, really nobody cares, right? In the grand scheme of things, that's not so important, right? But someone will always remember how you made them feel, right? And that's the important thing. And when it comes down to it, when we're all on those last breaths, that's what's going to mean the most. Is how did we leave this world? Did we make it a better place? Did we help people along the way and give them a chance and an opportunity to be successful and make them feel good along the way? That's what really matters. So that has to be how we live our lives.
For sure. Okay, well, Bill, you're my man. I tell you what, great start here. But I tell you what, Bill, do you remember something as a kid yourself of what really got you over some humps? Are there some motivating people in your life too, Bill?
Well, yeah, I think what Terry's talking about there is huge, and I think that's one of these things. And I'm probably not the role model of a parent, but we've actually raised a fair number of pretty gosh darn good adults, and that's what I guess what Terry learned, and he didn't at the time probably didn't realize what an impact it was making and made on John at the time, and probably the rest of his teammates and coaches. But as parents, I think a lot of us get it backwards. Everybody always talks about they want to raise great kids, and someone told me real young that's not the goal. The goal is to raise great adults, and that's just a step that we have to do. And I think that's obviously what Troy and Terry's parents did, and it started at a young age and carried on. So I could not tell you who told me that early in my life, but we've been very blessed with the kids that we raised, and I think that's a lot of it has to do with that. Our goal was never to have a.
Oh, we got Bill cutting out. Never happened before. So if we miss you, Bill, you can come back in. But no, I'm going to ask. So I'm going to flip over to Jordan for a second. See what's happening. Oh, there you are, Bill.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. I was really it was great to hear that from Terry. But I really listening to you and just knowing the motivational stuff that's coming through your mind, and I wonder how much that is. How much do you play as a motivational teacher and inspirational for the women's team? Obviously, a lot of the women's athletes come in with there's a lot of coaches that come. They have their personal coach, and and you get a situation like at the Olympics time or World Championship time. I'd be really curious how those motivational talks go.
Well, I think, it definitely goes back and forth. But, I think like I always tell the athletes, I can't be up here in a clown suit every day. I can't be the one bringing the excitement to the room and the energy to the room and things like that. That has to come from you, and that has to come from within, right? But I think, having said that, everyone needs leadership, right? And everyone needs guidance along the way, and that including myself, right? There's people that I look to, and I ask for help, and I need guidance and leadership as well. And the elite athletes, just because they're aspiring Olympic athletes or world champions, and they still need leadership along the way, right? And you have to make sure that you're there to give it when they need it. It's reading the maybe it's not verbal, but the nonverbal communication that athletes are walking in the room with, and you've got to be able to catch that, and you've got to be able to harness that and do what you need to do to get them to the place where they can have a good day, because every day lost is is you don't get back, and then you have to look at it like your opponent's got ahead of you that day, right? And so we've got to get people to that place. So, but you come into a job and you think you're going to come in and change the world, and what you realize is they have a huge impact on you as well. I mean, the people that I'm fortunate enough to be around on a daily basis, the Adeline Grays of the world, and Helen Maroulis and Sarah Hildebrandt, and Tamara Mensah and Jakara Winchester and people like that. I mean, they're fabulous human beings, right? And they bring something different. They bring a different energy about them. They bring a different mindset about them. And that does rub off. And then that does, you realize that they're also having a huge impact on how you look at the day-to-day of things. But you got to help each other along. Some days they need to be pushed back in line. Some days they need a hug and some encouragement, and you've got to be able to read that and move that forward. So, I think it's important as a leader, as a national team coach, you have to set the tone. You have to make sure the tone is right when you start the day and when you finish the day. When they're leaving the practice room, you need to make sure they're leaving there feeling good about themselves and not walking away, feeling down about the day, because that'll eat at them as well. So I think it's very important to bring that aspect in on a daily basis, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I do have one more question, kind of a follow up on that I would just kick myself if I don't get it asked. So, can you just kind of give us a little, a glimpse into what the 2016 Olympics was like to you? Being on this program for such a long period of time and seeing.
Say that again, Bill.
Sorry, you cut out a bit.
Okay, yeah, I just wonder if you could give us a little insight as to how big a day it was for you and for the program in 2016 at the Olympics with Helen winning the gold.
Well, it was a huge day, and it wasn't just a huge day because of the gold medal, right? I mean, if you look back and the history of Helen Maroulis, you have to look back to 2012 to really capture it. And in 2012, she was the #1 ranked person. She was expected to make the Olympic team, and at the Olympic trials, she got beat, right? And she was broken as broken can be, right? And she did not know if she was gonna be able to come back. And we were in camp in 2012, and I think it was July or August before the Olympic Games, and we were getting the Olympic team ready. And of course, she's the alternate, and so she's in camp, but she's really not there mentally, right? And so one day, I asked her to come with me, and we went out for a run. And it's actually, now that thinking back on it, it's a good way to talk to people, because if I get her on a run, then she can't talk back, So, but we were running, and I was just asking questions, and just really seeing where her mind was, and I knew it wasn't in the right place, and she just said, I just don't know if I can do it again. I just don't know if I can put my heart into it again, because the thing is, there's no guarantees, right? There's no guarantees that it's going to work out, and that's the beauty of sport, but that's the heartache of sport, right? But that's what makes success so great. When she did win in 2016, it was so great because of what she went through. And we just talked, and I just said, you're going to have to find a way. You're going to have to find a way to be able to jump in with both feet again, because if you don't do it, don't even come back, right? There's no use to come back half-heartedly, and you have to step into it with everything you can. And if you do that, we knew she was talented, and we knew she had the ability, but she had to be in it, and she had to be. And so what happened was, she made a decision. And once she made the decision, the obstacle didn't matter, right? And the challenges didn't matter. And she started making better decisions for what she needed, right? And better decisions in her daily life, better decisions on the things she needed. She took more control of things instead of asking and looking for everyone to give her answers. She started realizing that, she had to be in control of her own destiny a little bit here and take some ownership there. And when she did that, now you know her as the world champ and Olympic champ, right? But the heartbreak, she needed that, and I told her that was the most important thing in your wrestling career is that heartbreaking moment in 2012. And if you didn't have that, you probably wouldn't be standing where you are today, and you wouldn't be the great, ambassador and the great champion that she is today. And so she wasn't going to beat Yoshida doing things half right. She wasn't going to beat Yoshida halfway in. She wasn't going to beat Yoshida letting people make decisions for her and this and that. She had to own that. And once she did that, the day of the Olympics, and it's easy to say right now because it's hindsight is 2020, but really, I really knew she was ready to win. It was her time, and you could sense it. You had a feeling about it. Was it a surprise to me? Not at all. It really wasn't. It would have been surprised the other way, actually, if she didn't win. I just thought that everything was pointing in her direction, that things were going to go her way. And what that did for Helen was unbelievable, but what it did for the U.S. women's program and the growth in our country, we needed a role model. We needed someone that the next generation of athletes could look up to and talk about, and they needed to know that we could do this right here in this country. And so, it's really immeasurable what that gold medal means and has meant to the organization and the country and the growth of women's wrestling. And so, and we were a part of it. But Helen had to make that decision, right? Helen is the one that did the work and put the time in and put the energy, and she had to make that decision. And I'm very happy she did, because it was definitely a great moment, and you'll never forget it. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, I enjoyed watching all these. In fact, every time you guys go to the Worlds, when you start traveling the country, the world, you guys have been all over the place. Have you ever made a count of how many countries you've been in?
I haven't, but I've seen most of the world that I want to see, right? And a lot of places that I maybe didn't want to see, but yeah, it's probably over 40, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. We travel a lot. We travel a lot of places again and again, over and over. But I've been to the reaches of, Mongolia, to Cambodia, to Azerbaijan, Ukraine, Russia. We tend to go to those types of countries, and when we're lucky enough, once in a while we get to go to a Brazil or something like that has some nice warm weather and some nice beaches. But most of the time we're in North Dakota-like country. We're in cold, hard winters and trying to stay warm. So.
Now, if you had one country to pick that you could go train in besides the United States with your girls, where would you take them?
Well, it depends what we're looking for, right? If I'm looking for a relaxing training camp where I want to enjoy the scenery and the beach, then I'll probably go to Spain. If I want to go to a place where I know we're going to get really good, hard training and it's going to be very, very challenging, then I'll go to China, right? Okay. And if I want to go a place where I really think we can pick something up and learn and try to really understand, then it's maybe Russia, Ukraine, Japan. Everyone brings something different to the table, right? And there's so much to learn. Every style is so different around the world. And, it's really interesting. One of my favorite things is really at a competition is the warm-up area.
Okay.
Before the competition, just sitting back and watching warm-ups, and hopefully, if I have one of my assistant coaches warming the team up, and just sit back and watch the other countries warming up. And it's so it's so interesting to see how different teams warm up and how it really fits their style of wrestling and everything like that. It's really interesting, and I've learned a ton in the back room before the competitions. Way more so than probably out in front watching matches. And so,
well, that's pretty interesting, because I tell you what, you're a lot like me. I like to observe people. I like to observe at tournaments what coaches are doing. And I keep my own little memory bank of that stuff, and I see what successful coaches are doing. And it's very relating to, how they deal with their kids, how they're on the mat, off the mat, and the success of their team. But there's a great question that came in here. Now, the person that's asking this question is Sean Lewis. He is the head wrestling coach in Pierce, South Dakota. They've started a girls program, South Dakota sanctioned this year. Pretty cool. And his daughter wrestles. So he's got a great question. It says, what is your best advice to coaches who are getting girls wrestling established?
Well, I would say you got to get people in groups, right? Don't just bring in an individual, right? And I blame myself for this situation, even for my own daughter, right? My own daughter did not wrestle. And I wish she would have, for not reasons of having
a little blanket here. A little technical.
Still there?
Yep, still there. Just blanket all of it. There, we're right back.
So when I was talking about my daughter, and she never did wrestle, and she's in college now, but she played volleyball, and I blame myself for that, really, because she was interested. She was always in the wrestling room, always around, just like we grew up. She was kind of that mat rat, that was always around, and she'd be rolling around with the athletes and this and that. But when I first took her to the practice room, there was no girls there, and I wasn't smart enough to bring her friends with, right? And so, it was very intimidating, very scary. And so she ended up playing volleyball, and I always say that was my own punishment. Then I spent the next 6 years in a volleyball gym. but no, it was good for her. But I think so. When you're starting a program, I think it's important, to invite girls in, but tell them to bring their friends, right? I mean, to get some pairs in there, at least a group of people, or at least 2 people together, and have someone there that can see things through their eyes, and feel what they're feeling, and so they have something to go back and talk about and discuss. But I think that's important, right? But I think wrestling is wrestling. Don't make it so different, right? And wrestling is wrestling, coaching is coaching, motivating is motivating, and you got to go in there and do your job. And you may have some of the guys in on the team that don't want women in the room, and are making fun of this or making fun of that. Well, then it's your time to lead, right? Then you need to get in there and make sure that your thought process and your idea of what you want in that room is out front and center. Athletes will follow a coach's lead. There's no doubt about it. I think athletes at a young age will follow a coach's lead, but you've got to lead, right? And you've got to make sure that they know that room is open for anyone that walks through those doors, and this sport is for anyone that walks through those doors if they want to work and they want to be there and they want to be a part of it. But I wouldn't make it different, right? It's not gonna, this sport is a great sport, and we know that what it's given us in our lives, or we wouldn't be sitting here in front of you today, right? I mean, we know that the character value and the values that it teaches young people, and we want that for everyone, right? We want those values for our daughters and our sons, right? And open up that door of opportunity and give kids the chance to learn from this great teacher of a sport, and let it lead them. Let it work those kinks out. They're going to learn so much from being on that wrestling mat, right? And they're going to learn how to fail, and they're going to learn how to pick themselves back up, and they're going to learn how to stand, with pride and after failure and coming back up. So I just think that you have to open that door, and you're going to be so thankful, right, that you did. Because I think as a coach, really, yeah, medals and championships are important, but that's not why we coach, right? That's not why we do what we do. It's about building the human being, right? And giving them the opportunities and teaching them the characteristics they need to be successful. And that's what this sport does so great. And you got to realize that there's a lot of high school kids that this is the last time that they're going to have a team of people around them trying to help them succeed, moving them forward, and giving them the tools to be successful. Because once they get out in the world, then it's a dog-eat-dog world. Everyone's after their job. Everyone's after, everything that they have. It's dog-eat-dog, right? And you got to give them the tools to be able to handle those situations as they come forward. And your wrestling room may be the last place that they ever get that. The last place.
I don't think about that. That is right.
And that's how I look at it. Like even here, just because someone's an aspiring Olympic athlete, it doesn't mean that they've had an easy road. It doesn't mean that they've had the perfect upbringing. It doesn't mean that they don't need something. But, the real success is going to be in 10 years down the road and 15 years down the road. Can they handle life's challenges as they come to them, right? Are they successful in their jobs and their careers? Are they successful in their marriages? That's where, you're going to see the impact that hopefully the program has had on them as individuals. And that's what sport is about. It's not about championships. Right? It's not about medals. I mean, those things are great, but it's about what they learn in the process of winning, in the process of those milestones. What did they learn during that process? And those are the things that's why we put our kids in sport, right? Those are the reasons.
So Terry, since you have your women's team, now the first time you see some of the younger girls, how are you bringing them for, let's say, a high school style wrestling to an international style, and to bring them to the next level? Like, you could say they're at a certain level and all of a sudden they're jumping to the next level. Kind of like, you remember your first time stepping in the Iowa room, it's a different level. And then when you go to something else, tell me how you are doing that at the Olympic Training Center. What are you just now? I know you're getting the prime athletes to there, but there's still another level from when you're first getting them to when they're at international competition.
Sure. So this is like I think a good story. Adeline Gray, right? And if you look back now, Adeline Gray is our 5-time world champion. She's the odds-on favorite right now to win the Olympic gold in Tokyo this summer. And the year is 2020 right now, right? And almost 2021. And if you go back to the beginnings, we're in Russia. We're in Moscow, Russia, at a training camp with the Russian national team, and it's around 2007 or 2008. And we have Adeline in camp, and she's a young girl. She's a junior, but I think if she didn't make our national team, she was very close to it, and we knew she was a rising star, right? And so we took her with at camp, and so during the camp, she was really, really struggling. I mean, she looked like a rag doll, right? Everyone was beating her, right? And she was really upset and emotional, and showed it. Adeline, she cries in practice. It's okay. We always say tears are okay. We can work through tears, right? But we got to keep working, right? I mean, we got to keep. We can't get discouraged. We can be frustrated. That's okay, but discouragement isn't okay. That's when we stop trying, right? And so let's just keep working. And so anyways, so we're after one of the days of practices, we're sitting with the Russian coaches and we're talking and they ask about Adeline, and they're like, this girl, Adeline, why does she cries all the time? She's crying all the time. But in the same sentence, they were like, but she's going to be good. She's going to be good. They could see it too. I mean, there was something in there about this girl that was good. And so I think the first thing is realize it's going to be a process, right? To win at this level, it's a process, and they come in and they're green, right? And there's a lot to learn, and there's, you know, it's not only learning yourself and your own body control, but it's learning the different styles around the world that you have to compete against, right? And it's strengthening your body, and it's getting that the mental part of it as well, bringing that along. It's a process. So, you know, we really utilize our opponents, our enemies a lot. Right? We go into training camps every time we leave for an international tour. We usually wrestle in the competition, and we usually stay there for at least a week to 10 days of camp, because there's no greater reward or not reward. There's no greater test than just putting them in that hostile environment, right? And put them in there, and all of a sudden there's, you know, you may have 10 Americans on that tour, and all of a sudden you have 40 Russians, right? And now you got Russian. You wanted to wrestle Russia? We're going to wrestle Russia, right? And we're going to be in front of them for the next 10 days, and there's no out, right? There's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to go. We're going to wrestle them. And you know, you can just learn so much, because, you know, when you're in the competition, it's about winning. But you don't necessarily feel the sport. You don't feel wrestling in a competition. You've got to be in training where you're not so up against the gun to score a point or this or that, where you can really pay attention to learning. And so, you know, we utilize our international competitors a lot, and we're in training camp with them a lot. And, you know, it's just our job to learn more than they do, right? That's you know, we always talk about it too as a national team, like, hey, we're coming into camp here, and this is great if we learn more than they do. Mm-hmm. So we got to make sure that while we're in that camp, we're very focused. We're there for the right reasons. We're there in the right purpose and the right intensity. And if we do that, then, you know, we'll leave there and we'll take more from that camp than they will. And otherwise it can backfire on us too. But you know, we do utilize that a lot for that growth and bringing that athlete to the next level. You can sit in the U.S. room all we want, and we can train here, but we've got to get overseas and feel the Chinese style of wrestling, feel the Japanese style of wrestling, feel the you know, Russian, Ukrainian, Belarusian style of wrestling. It's different. Mm-hmm. It's different than how we wrestle here. And so that aspect of it has been very, very important to us. Okay. Our development, I think, as a program.
Okay. Well, one more quick question, then I'm going to go to Jordan. I got a couple for him written down. But one more question is, do you think, now I'm going to ask on the male side, do you think it'd be more beneficial to America if we had more freestyle wrestling, let's say at the high school level, instead of collegiate? Do you think it'd be different?
Well, I do. I mean, you know, if we're trying to be the best at freestyle wrestling or Greco-Roman wrestling, then you wrestle it, right? I mean, you know, but I also realize that that's probably never going to change in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. I don't think that high school wrestling will ever change, and there's benefits. There's no doubt that the high school style of wrestling, the collegiate style of wrestling, there's a grit to it. There's a toughness to it. Right? And even how we do things, you know, like our season, having a season where we have 2 matches a week, or, you know, at least a dual meet every week and a competition every week after week after week. That is not the European or the world, you know, that's not how they look at wrestling. Wrestling is a year-long thing. They'll wrestle every 6 to 8 weeks, and they'll prepare for that one competition, then they'll move on to the next one. Right?
Like when you're saying competition, or are you talking?
No, I mean, yeah, like, you know, Europeans and Asians, you know, the rest of the world, they look at how the American system is set up, and they shake their heads. Like, I can't believe you wrestle that much, that often, you make weight that much, that often, you know, and it's just really an American thing more, where you go overseas, and, you know, their competitions are spread out, right? Their athletes are not wrestling that much. I mean, if an athlete wrestles once a month, I would say that's a lie.
Wow.
That's a lot. And so that's very unique to the American style, or the American system, I should say. I do feel that for the women's program, we do have a leg up, right? Because now our college system is freestyle, and it is going to stay that way. And it would have been, from a national coach perspective, it would have been a complete backwards move to change that back to collegiate style of wrestling, or folk style. And we said it. Hey, if being an NCAA sport means that we're going to move back to collegiate style at the college level, we'll stay out of the NCAA area. But fortunately, that they saw that there was enough programs out there and enough programs going with freestyle that they followed our lead on it, and they loved that. So I'm very, very fortunate for that. I don't see the high school system being that, because that's, our numbers grow at the high school level and we get people involved. And I think having our college system freestyle is definitely a huge step forward for us.
Okay, well, they always lead to one more question. How many states now are sanctioned? Can you refresh us on that for girls wrestling? And then how many states from there, do any of them have theirs just be freestyle at the high school level for the girls?
No, we don't have any that are just freestyle. We do have, we now have 29 states. And so you can look at the impact of Helen Maroulis' medal. And I'm not saying that was everything, but I think it was a huge part of the growth that we've had. In 2016, we had 3 states that were sanctioned. Now we have 29. And so, I think that, and it's just continuing. And we're the one thing during the pandemic that the pandemic hasn't slowed down. Right? I think we've added 3 college programs and 2 states during the pandemic. Right? It's just a great movement right now, and it's great to be a part of it.
And James Porter's our women's director for USA Wrestling. North Dakota, he's on listening. North Dakota's close.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to come back to Jordan. Terry will give your vocal cords a little break.
Okay.
Jordan, I want to go back to your history in wrestling. Tell me how you started wrestling and the first time you stepped on the mat, and what do you remember most about your beginning of your wrestling career?
I think I probably started it. I'm maybe a little bit different than the other guys that are on this call or on this this meeting with me. I don't, unlike a lot of you guys, I don't live and breathe and die it, right? I'm a wrestling guy, but I don't live and breathe and die it. So for me, I was, went to a couple wrestling programs when I was growing up in Minot, over at Minot High. I remember wrestling, in grade school. I was terrible, obviously. I remember my 7th grade year, I was 2-22. And then my 8th year, I went to 22-2. So I had that big flip, growing up and having that. And then just being in the wrestling room and I can't shoot a basketball to save my life, so that was out. And so the only other option was really wrestling, and it was something that I could dedicate my time to, and I had the opportunity to do it. And I think probably the greatest reason I stayed with it is I was successful. I think a lot of the time people aren't successful at something and they just quit at it. And I was fortunate enough, could have quit after 7th grade and just shut it down. But I don't know that my dad would have allowed that to happen. He wanted me to do something and be active, and it was either that or work. And not a lot of jobs you can have in 7th grade. So it was continue to wrestle. So did that and had success at the high school level. Never won a state championship. I think I placed 5th as a junior and 4th as a senior, but just having the opportunities to do it and going from football right into wrestling, right into track, and then senior year playing baseball. So it kept you busy, gave you something to do, and I think At that time, again, not only was I successful personally, but we had a very successful team. We got stomped by Napoleon, but we were still a very successful team. Went up to Minot and we're in the state championship and I think we opened up at 89. Nick Tome gets stomped by Jesse Labor and by one of the McClearys. And then at 2:15, Mitch Meyer gets stomped by one of the McClearys. And like, okay, we got to stop the bleeding. And yours truly gets stomped by a McCleary. And here we are, 18-0 out of the gate. We're three probably strongest guys in the lineup, or two or three of the strongest guys. It's like, it's over. At that point, it was done. So just a great opportunity and a lot of fun and stuff that
the thing I remember most about you, Jordan, is, you brought the aspect of professional wrestling almost into the mat, meaning you get the crowds going, and you were
I was a showman. I mean, I'll be the first to tell you that I was a showman. I still am.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, it didn't change.
And if you guys haven't heard Jordan speak, he's always flamboyant. Every match, he's into them. It's pretty cool. No, definitely. No, so now you, when you were wrestling in high school, who were some of your toughest matches that you faced, Jordan? And if you remember some of the names, of course, I probably do.
Yeah, I mean, I remember as a freshman, Casey Kwame was in the same weight class I was, and he'd run roughshot, and we wrestled him in the dual tournament in Velva, and I happened to end up catching him in a head and arm. I pinned him in the dual tournament in Velva, and I remember being at the state tournament that same year and sitting up in the end zone of the Bismarck Event Center, and over the public address, they're like, "It's time for your finalists at 285 pounds. We start with Casey Kwame," and he's like, his record of 33 wins and 3 losses. And I'm like, one of them's right here, buddy. And the only 2 other losses he had was to a guy in Minnesota who was the state champion. Bad part for Casey was that same year Josh Epperly was a heavyweight, and they didn't even get done with Casey's introduction, and Kwame pinned him. I mean, he pinned him in the first 90 seconds of the first period, right? This is the guy who lost 3 times all season. So Josh Epperly was a guy that I watched. I mean, he was mean. Josh Epperly was just flat out mean. He was a big dude. Nick Tim came from Hettinger, the Doling boys from Carrington. I matched up with McCleary, God knows how many times. And it's such, Terry talked about it, the relationships and what it means. I mean, I had my dad, my dad, Jerry, and Barry McCleary nose to nose screaming at each other. And then I get done with high school or my parents screaming at, Barry and his wife. And all of a sudden you get done with high school, go through college. And I played with Kelly at University of Mary. We both played football at University of Mary. And then I had my role here at Beck. Now Barry did a state championship or 2 with me. I mean, he broadcast a state championship or 2. So you can go from this, and I don't want to use the word hatred because that's not truly what it is. But at that point, it's so intense and such a desire to win. And they were so successful. Every time I walk into that Napoleon gym and we broadcast the game, and I can't count how many times I look at that stupid banner across the gym that says 2003 state champion or 2002. And I'm like, oh, we missed it, So, but now Barry and I have great conversations. Like I said, he was willing to come in at the state tournament, and it was such a great experience. It'd take a second to tell a story because so Barry's doing a state championship with me, and it was when Reese was in the lineup and probably a Jengula and the other names that always come for Napoleon. And so Barry's sitting to my left, and I was just after he had retired and his sons had taken over, and the match gets over. The first Napoleon kid is a state champion, and I apologize, don't remember who it is, but everybody knows the state championship in North Dakota. Hand gets shook, arms go up, and it's a beeline to the coach of the always jump into the coach's arms, right? They didn't jump into the coach's arms. They came to the broadcast table and they jumped into Barry's arms. And so that was the relationship Barry McCleary had and still has with those kids. He had that type of relationship where a guy was there that long. And I'll tell you what, if you'd asked me as a junior in high school whether I liked or hated Barry McCleary, I'd have told you I hated him. I absolutely hated him, and I hated his kids because they were good and they stopped us. But ultimately, it was because they were competitive and because they were good, and you wanted to be good. I mean, we beat Mount High in a duel that Mount High had, it's a lose-lose for them. We beat them. We're number 1. Napoleon's number 1. We're going back and forth, and then they beat us in the state tournament. It's like That's how it's supposed to happen. That's what's supposed to happen. So you have those relationships, and like I said, you talk to Barry to have those conversations. It's so fun to go back on that, right? And all the different things that happen. So for me, it was really just this opportunity to do something I was successful at and put the time and effort. I had to cut. My freshman year was the only year I really cut, and then I was the heavyweight, and I kind of moved my way up, but. It was an opportunity, and it was a lot of fun. Like I said, I was fairly successful at it, and it was a lot of fun just to be around to the trips. And I saw Justin Dakota, who was on a couple weeks ago. He made a comment, and I'll respond to it because this is actually kind of a funny story.
Comment.
Yeah, ask me about the time I was left in Velva and he decided to ride back with the cheerleaders. Well, we're in Velva. Obviously, back then the heavyweight always went last, so I'm last. And what I didn't realize is everyone else went to the locker room on this side. I went to the locker room on this side. So I'm in the locker room. I'm getting dressed. I'm showering. I'm doing my thing. The guys from Stanley have the boombox blaring in the locker room. I'm having a heck of a good time. I come out.
Probably singing.
Gone, and they're gone, right? I'm like, they're gone. There's no buses. And I'm like, well, and if that was 21, 22 miles away from Minot, so whatever. There's enough people, Try to find, the only part was trying to find somebody who didn't hate me to give me a ride back, I don't think cheerleaders were big fans of me either, but that was the longest 21-mile trip I've ever been on, and I've never let him forget it of that one. And another story on Justin, a travel story. This one, Justin Dakota and then Derek Bischoff were co-head coaches at the time, and so we were going to Newtown for a tournament, and Derek had overslept. So we're waiting on Derek to get there. We're going in two vans, and we take off. It's, roads aren't great. And so Derek's trying to get a hold of Terry Masson to say, hey, we're going to be late. We're going to miss weigh-ins, whatever it is. And I don't know if those vans we had at Bishop Ryan had a governor on them, but if they were, that needle was slamming the top of that governor because we got there. We made weigh-ins. We made them by a minute, and we all weighed in. But those are experiences, right? I mean, Terry talked about it at a much higher level than I've even been a part of, but I don't think it's any different, right? I mean, it's all about the experiences, and he talks about it from a coach's standpoint of what you want to get out of the athlete, and it's about creating better people and learning adversity and being a part of a team, and I go back on that. I played college football, I played baseball, I was part of a track team. I did those things, but ultimately, I think the close-knitness, if you want to call it a word, of that wrestling program, and yes, there's sacrifice in other sports, don't get me wrong, but to watch guys give up food, give up meals, give up time, have to dedicate losing weight, sweating, hour after hour in a 100-degree room, there's some pride in that. And I never to be that guy, right? I'm like, turn it down. Why is it so hot in here, right? Like, what's the point, right? So that was never me, but I watched the guys go through that. And I think personally as a competitor, you gain a greater respect for the guys on your team when they're willing to go through that to not only better themselves, but when you're in the dual team portion, you're in these duels to score points and to compete at that level. And, some guys, like you said, will never go past that team aspect in the high school level. And some people, a lot of the time the wrestlers maybe don't translate to another sport. Maybe that's the only sport they do. Maybe they're the guy that is goofy, right? I mean, maybe they're the guy that can't shoot a basketball. You watch them throw a football and you're like, just put it down. Like, don't even try again, right? So Terry raises his hand. So I think in those situations, that's the only thing, right? I mean, that's the only thing they have from a team aspect. So I think from my standpoint, I saw that, and there was guys that I tried to quote unquote befriend because that was their only time, right? And so I think you never forget those relationships, you never forget those experiences, you never forget the opportunities you gain. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've taken away from competing personally is just that opportunity to have those relationships and to be able to know that you're able to, help somebody and allow them, I guess, to be a part of something that's just, it's actually bigger than them,
Mm-hmm. So true, Jordan. Definitely. Yeah. Bill, got something right away, but I've got many more.
Yeah. It's fun to have Jordan on here and hear kind of his history, in the sport that way. I always, this is one thing we kind of missed this year, right? I always look forward to that first duel of the year. We've got Carrington has Oaks and Jordan's always there. And we missed that one this year. And so it is truly something that as the schedule gets kind of rolling out, there's things you get used to having, and that was one thing that I really miss. You'd like to see it. Get a chance to see Jordan come rolling in, and the circus comes to town, and he brings a lot of excitement. So it's fun to have him on here tonight. And obviously, I get to see him just a few times a year. Between that duel and the state tournament, and then it's been nice getting him to do a couple of NDSU matches over the last few years too, and seeing have some fun doing that. Usually with Jack Mon, I think.
Yeah, Jack's been great. I mean, having the opportunity to do the NDSU stuff, that was something that we tried to put together for a while, and we're finally able to kind of piece it together and get a deal done. And NDSU continues to grow. I mean, you guys obviously follow a little bit more than I do, but their program has gotten bigger. The program has gotten more respect, and I think it's so different, right? I go from on a Thursday calling a high school wrestling duel where anything could happen, to a collegiate wrestling duel where it's, Jack goes, okay, this is a win and this one could be a win. And we got here and it's this match and a bonus point here. And it's going to be 26-21 and it's 26-21. And you're like, I was right. So you kind of play that, right? The pitch level, it's a little bit different, but I think for me, not being a super into it all the time guy, it's always fun to go and see these guys compete. And I think the one thing that I get, and even as a casual fan, I get from high school to collegiate is, and I've said it countless times in the broadcast, and Jack would laugh if he heard it, the word panic. There's never, and I truly mean that, there's never panic on the face of a collegiate wrestler. There may be in here, but you don't see panic on their face. High school kids panic. Everybody knows that, right? They're young. There could be seventh graders. It could be, 13, 14, 15 years old, right? College wrestlers don't panic. And so I think that for me, they end up in a lot of goofy spots. They end up in a lot of weird, awkward places, but there's no panic. There's patience. And I go back to a guy in high school, Jesse Labor, right? Jesse Labor was a technician. That guy never panicked. And he always seemed to get in trouble, but he never got scored on. Somehow he'd be in the worst position imaginable and he'd come out on top, and he never panicked and he was never fired up. It was one speed and he just went out and he was the technician and he just got it done. Right. And so the difference between high school and collegiate, and it's been a lot of fun. I mean, John, you remember I hadn't called a collegiate wrestling duel in my entire life. I'm at the Applebee's in Fargo and I'm like, hey, John, I don't know anything about collegiate wrestling. You got a half hour? And he's like, oh, yeah, you bet. I had no clue. I mean, I knew the high school style. And he's like, oh, it's not that different. And he explained everything to me. And he's like, well, you got Jack, so you'll be fine. I'm like, yeah, I guess. I guess I'll figure it out, right? And obviously it went fine. And we've done 8, 9, 10, 12 duels since then. But just that difference, that pace and the technical portion of it, and the fact that there are guys that are out of control. I mean, Luke Weber's a guy that looks like he's out of control, right? I mean, he's a fun guy to watch. He's great for television. I mean, you liked those guys on TV because you're like, let's see some fireworks, big fella. Let's see the Pride of Montana bring us some fireworks. You always knew it was coming, right? But all those different things just make it kind of this enjoyable, 6-minute, 7-minute dance that, who's gonna lead, who's gonna follow, who's gonna be, in control, who's gonna lose control. And just kind of watching it progress has kind of been fun from that high school transition to getting the chance to call, the collegiate wrestling duel.
No, I tell you what, Jordan, you do a great job. I can compliment you all day. And you start noticing, I don't know how you were so quiet for the half hour that Terry and we were talking.
I'm good. I was listening, man. I mean, when you're a guy like Terry Steiner, I was taking what Terry was saying, right? And again, haven't been an athlete forever. You see the trophies are, old man softball, right? John knows all about that. There's nothing to do with being actually athletic, right? This is having cocktails and an aluminum bat, right? They're way different, right? But listening to Terry talk, and I think it's so interesting to see the perspective, right? Because I think of what Terry talks about and how he kind of approaches at what is the highest level of wrestling and the approach he takes on it. And I think he's able to take the mental aspect, which I think is hard. You can't take the same application that Terry does to an Olympic wrestler and apply it the same way to a high school kid. You could take pieces of it, I think, and apply it and try to make it logical to them. But that's a hard transition to make at a kid who's 14, 15, 16 years old and maybe isn't emotionally developed enough to understand how to deal with that, right? So it's interesting to hear him talk and how it's probably incredibly similar, for a person who's an Olympian and dealing with that same person who's 14 years old or 12 years old, and he's the 13 years old, and he's a seventh grader who goes out and gets beat 5 times out of the gate. The concept is still the same. It's just, how do you take that message and deliver it effectively to the intellect level and to the emotional level and to the to the developmental level of the person that you're trying to communicate with.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really tricky, because I tell you what, you see the good junior high coaches, they know how to interact with those junior high kids.
Absolutely.
And it's the same at the high school level, where you start seeing the teams that develop. You've got those coaches that can handle certain groups. And one thing I've always been impressed with the Century team that Lamar does is, honestly, he has coaches that are very specialized and find the groups of kids that work into that niche. And it's a process from year to year to year. And it's very rare that you see a wrestler that's just 1 year, just a stud. You see them just progress as you go, and the coaches that help them along the way. I don't know, Terry, what do you do with your coaches now? How many coaches do you have under you at the Olympic Training Center? And now you can definitely mention some names. I love when people throw out some names.
Yeah. So directly underneath me at the USA Wrestling I have 2 coaches, Clarissa Chun. Clarissa was a Olympic bronze medalist and world champion for us. And then Jessica Medina, who was a couple-time world team member for us. She's our development coach. And Clarissa's like the assistant coach under me with the senior team. But really, we work a lot with all groups. But those are the 2 coaches underneath me right now.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that's stated the wrong way. They're not underneath me. They bring as much to the table as I do.
Right. Just title.
And maybe more. A lot of times, especially dealing with a female team, right? I mean, the female athletes. I'm the last person to know things, right? I mean, they communicate with Clarissa and Jessica a lot of times more than they do me, and I'll find it through them and stuff. But it's so important. I think that's the one thing that's important. I think it's very important to have coaching a female team. I think it's important to have a female representative on your coaching staff for sure, if not more than one. Right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So yeah. And then it's just, then if you're thinking about the whole system, then you're constantly managing, not really managing, but keeping in contact with, building that trust with, and keeping them unified to the national plan. That's all the RTC coaches and the college coaches, right? You've got to keep everyone you've got to lay out the plan so it's well understood, and they understand what we're trying to do from year to year and from Olympic cycle to Olympic cycle. That has to be something that everyone understands, so we're working in the same direction, because there's nothing worse than having a bunch of great, talented coaches all working in different directions. Right? And so, I mean,
well, now you've been there long enough. Who helped you set up? Now you pretty much probably have a plan from year to year, from Olympic cycle to Olympic cycle. Who are some of the people that helped you along the way to develop this? Because I guarantee this has probably got your signature all over it.
Yeah, I mean, we do. Every Olympic cycle, there's a 4-year plan that has to be submitted to the U.S. Olympic Committee. And that's where our funding, a large part of our funding comes from. Right? And so we have to have that plan from, from year 1 to year 2 to year 3 to the Olympic year, right? What are we doing? And in general, in a very broad sense, I can say that year 1 is really filling the backpack, right? We're giving them the knowledge, we're giving them the skills, we're trying to at least get them involved with every aspect, right? And have them have a bit of understanding of the technical knowledge we're trying to get to them. Maybe it's the strength and conditioning, maybe it's the nutrition and the diet part of it, the mental side of it. I mean, we're trying to touch base, at least have them have some contact to all of that. then year 2 would be more, now we're going to take this year 2 and we're going to go overseas and see how it's working, right? And we're going to put you in harsh environments and we're going to get in competition. Year 1 is more about just learning and teaching and getting the information to them. Year 2 is about, let's go test it. Let's go see where we're failing. Let's see what we really, maybe it's something we think we understand, but do we really know it? And even if we know it, can we really utilize it yet? Right? I mean, can we really use it when we need it most on the competition mat? So that's learning by actually doing, right? I mean, we're putting out there on the competition mat. Year 3 is really the first year, and winning is always important, right? I mean, it's very clearly stated by USA Wrestling and the U.S. Olympic Committee that they want medals, right? But from a coach's standpoint, it's got to be a process to it, right? So year 3 is really the first year where we're really focused on results, right? Now we're gonna make sure that we're peaking the right way. We're focusing on the periodization of everything, and doing that. But by year 3, 70% of the processes should be in place. They should know their warm-up routines. They should know how they're making weight. They should know the technical aspects that are important to them, right? And are important for their success. They should start to know their opponents and who they're going to have to, be up against for the Olympic and world medals, right? I mean, start to understand the competition. And then year 4 is simply just, we're not stepping on the mat until we're ready. And if we're not 90 to 100% ready, we're not stepping on the competition mat. We're not spending a lot of time with our foreign counterparts in year 4, and now it's just, tweaking and peaking and make sure we're rested and going in healthy and healthy mentally, right? Making sure that we're excited about what we're doing when we step on the competition mat. So that's kind of the 4-year plan. And then, the year-to-year plan, each year has its own challenges there too, right? And so, but that's really how we're laying that out and moving that forward, right? And it's definitely, the U.S. Olympic Committee and/or USA Wrestling is not going to get behind something if they can't see some strategy behind it and some. They're not going to throw money to it if they can't see a return on investment from it. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely got to be well planned out, and there's a lot of people involved in that. I'll come up with the first initial general plan. Well, by the time I get it back, I may not even recognize it, right? Because by the time everyone looks at it, and that's the great thing about being here is there's a team of people that are around you that are experts at what they do, right? And there's still an individual that I use. He doesn't even work for the U.S. Olympic Committee anymore, but every 4 years he gets a call from me. We sit down and we start talking about how everything looks after I have the initial plan laid out, and he's just a genius at what he does, and I believe in him wholeheartedly. So there's always people around you that you got to drop your ego, right? Because there's always people around you that know more than you do, and you have to be smart enough to listen to those people and bring them into the mix. Because you don't want to go into the Olympic Games or the World Championships and leave the World Championship or the Olympic Games shaking your head saying we missed it. Mm-hmm. Just that's not something I want to wake up with after those experiences, and you want to make sure that you've turned over every stone and get it right.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, Terry, I love it. So I'm going to bring you back, and I'm going to get you out of your USA Wrestling stuff, and I'm going to bring you back to your kid. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, tell us you're part of the original Mat Pack team, 1979. It's on all their shirts. Mat Pack established 1979, and I've seen that original picture. I want you to bring back some names. The first you started to wrestle when you were young. Some of your best partners. Who did you travel to the tournaments and enjoyed being around? I'm talking now. This is the youngest when you're probably 8 to 14, 15.
Well, my
I say Milo. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and Milo was definitely the leader of that crew. But Monty Trusty was in there. Steve McCormick, Lance Potter, the Cedarstrom brothers. There's so many. Yourself, you were in that time frame. There's so many names back in that time frame that had a huge impact. And we were so close to Jeff Hilsendigger. There's just so many people that we were around and had a huge impact on who we were and who we developed into being.
Tell people how successful you were early on.
Yeah, it wasn't so successful right away. Something, I talked about this today with the group I was talking to is, how did I get into wrestling? I don't know if I found wrestling or wrestling found me. I don't know how that happened, but something grabbed me, and it was important from the beginning. I knew that. I don't know why. I don't understand the reasoning for that, but it was important, right? And probably, and I know that I was comfortable in the wrestling room. Why? Because I didn't have to talk. Right? Troy and I grew up, right outside of Bismarck, and we were really, and still, we were still each other's best friend. But at that time, we were our only friends. We were like, in the mid 70s, and when we were 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, we had each other. And that's what we had. And all of a sudden, my mom put us in like T-ball or something like that, and we hated it. I was so nervous. I was so like out of my realm because I had to communicate, right? And wrestling was something I could do, and I didn't have to communicate. I could just go in there and do what I did, and I didn't have to talk to anyone. And it goes back to what Jordan was saying. People come into sports for different reasons, and it might be that oddball that sticks to wrestling because that's what made them comfortable. You never know, right? And wrestling made me comfortable, even though I was getting the tar beat out of me and didn't know which side was up. Something about it, I was comfortable in that wrestling room, and probably because the environment that Coach Trusty created, right? It was a happy, enjoyable environment. And I think that's probably, what kept us there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to keep Milo in the picture a little bit because I am going to have him on in the near future. But, I always enjoyed I came from a small town, and the same thing when I came up to Milo, I had more fun at his practice because it was a work hard, play hard atmosphere. It's where, guess what? You're going to work for Milo. But guess what? When it's all said and done, there was something to laugh at and have fun about. And I don't know, jokester, whatever it was, something to leave at the end of practice saying, guess what? It wasn't really that hard. Even though I about killed you today, it wasn't really that hard.
Right.
Okay. Now let's step to the next level I want for you. Okay. Now you started to get serious about wrestling. What age do you really feel you got serious? When did you get a mat in your house? When did you and your brother just really say, guess what? We want to take this to the next level?
I would say it was probably around eighth or ninth grade. When we realized that this is something that we were both really interested in, wanted to be successful at, and wanted to put everything into it. And I think the beauty of that, was our parents and how up to a certain point, they didn't have any say in anything. They just, hey, you guys do what you want to do and this and that. But my mom and dad worked hard, right? And they worked hard for everything they had. And it wasn't easy to take us places and go places. And to do that, they had to, work more, right? My dad worked 2 jobs. My mom worked 12, 16-hour days and to be able to do those things. And there was a point in time and there was a discussion that, hey, we'll get you to wherever you want to be, any camp you want to go to, or if you want to go to a competition or this or that, we'll get you to those places. But you've got to understand the significance of it, And I think you realize at a certain point that it's not just about you, right? It's about the people around you helping you, trying to accomplish that. And I think we realized that early on because, our parents did a lot for us. right? And gave us a lot of opportunity. And so, you know, that was definitely probably around that 8th, 9th grade year when that happened. And I think when it changed, and okay, now it's not just about having fun with your wrestling buddies, right? And having fun. It's about a little bit more than that. And not saying that it had to be everything. You know, I would have never imagined that I'd be in the position I'm in and still be in wrestling at my age. But we knew it was important. Right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then once you got to that level, you know, before you left high school, tell us some names again of who you were shooting to beat in the state of North End, probably South Dakota, because there were some guys. Who were some of your main competition then? Do you remember those names?
Well, I mean, you know,
how about Gary Schwann?
Yeah, Gary Schwann for sure. I mean, the Wells brothers.
Wells, yep.
You know, Jay and Jeff Wells.
You ever wrestle the Buxtons?
The Buxton twins from South Dakota. I mean, I never wrestled. They were a little bit smaller than me, but Troy did. I mean, I wrestled Jason in a freestyle or John in a freestyle tournament once, but not at the high school level. I mean, you know, Brett Mon. You know, Brett was. You know, he beat me my sophomore year. Casey Schweitzer. You know, Casey Schweitzer beat me out of the tournament, out of the state tournament, my freshman year of high school. You know, I never placed that year, and you know, that was a hard loss, right? That was a really, really hard loss for me. But again, I needed that. I mean, you need those things. I think sometimes, you know, people think that when you hit those rock bottoms, that it's the end of the world. And you know, you look back on it when you're my age, and you look back and you look at the blessing of those times. You know, the blessing of it. It made you ante up. It made you come back to it with a different sense of purpose and a different sense of focus. And you know, so it's people like that, Lance Potter, who was really like a brother, right? I mean, he was like a brother to us. And Lance Potter was a competitor. We had some hard, tough matches, and you know, so I mean, there's so many people that, you know, helped you along the way, and probably didn't even know it, right?
How about in our own Century Room? I could bring up the names, but I'd love to hear them from you.
Oh, shoot. I mean, yourself. I mean, you know, John Corwin. I mean,
did you ever have to wrestle John Corwin? I don't think so. He was way
yeah, but I'd try to. You know,
he was honestly in high school. He was the toughest wrestler in the room that I knew. He didn't have to do nothing. He could come probably from, you know, just walk in and off the street, and he'd double you, and you'd feel like your legs broke. You know?
Yeah. I mean, Mark Neuenschwander, you know, Eugene Nagel. Eugene Nagel beat the crap out of me so many times. I mean, you know, I mean, really, I mean, I'm surprised I never quit the sport. You know, I mean, I was like his rag doll, and he was a senior and I was a freshman, and you know, I don't know, we were talking just, it was a few years ago, and Eugene was, I don't know if it was on Dakota Grappler or something. And anyways, Eugene was on the line or something. I said, I just want, like, and I wouldn't even say that now anymore, but I would say, like, I just want like 10 minutes with you. That's 10 minutes with it. It'll make up all my time, all those hours just beating the crap out of me. You know, I mean, Dwayne Barnhart was a huge influence on us. And then, you know, the coaches around us were not only the Century coaches and Coach McCollum and Coach Welder and Coach Marquardt and, you know, Coach Gabriel. I mean, not just those, but I mean, Scotty Nolan at the time was coaching in Mandan, right? Scotty Nolan spent so much time with Troy and I, you know, I mean, so much time in the spring and the summer. And I mean, Jeff Schumacher and you know, Jim Makovsky, you know, I mean, Jim, those guys had such an influence on us, you know, and just, you know, we're really mentors and look up to them, not just looked up to them. I mean, we look up to them, and then they just have a way about reaching people and being able to relate to people. And it's just, we've been very fortunate to have a lot of good people around us. Right?
Okay. Now the next level. Tell me some story from probably the first month going into Iowa. Any story you can think of. Early start, stepping in the room the first time with Dan Gable. Find.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stories, but I think that, you know, that's one of the stories in itself, right? Is you walk in there and all of a sudden this idol, this, you know, legend, all of a sudden he's your coach, right? And you realize quickly that there's a lot of work to do. Right? And you're not going to just get there. But we knew that going in. You know, it's the one thing I will thank Coach Gable until the day I die, that when he recruited us, you know, he sat in front of us and he did not make us feel comfortable. He was not that kind of recruiter, and he was not going to come in and say everything positive and everything great. And he came in and there was a lot of awkward silences, and there was he talked about the Iowa program, and he didn't talk about any other program. And he came in and he just said, I'm not going to promise you anything.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I'm going to give you an opportunity. And he said, the reality of it is it's going to be hard to make our team, and it's going to be harder to be an All-American and even harder to be a national champion. And he said, and the reality of it is most of it's up to you. Well, I'll tell you what, as an 18-year-old kid, you do not feel comfortable after that conversation, right? But when you have time to walk away from the conversation and really think about it, we knew that he was speaking from his heart, and we knew that there was no BS in that, and I think it was just something that just, you know, you believed in so much, and you just wanted to see if you could attain the levels and please them, really, and please them. And so this is a story, and it wasn't my freshman year, but it was on my climb, and it was at the early start of it. You know, our first year we redshirted, and the second year I never made the team, and I got Doug Stryker was the gentleman ahead of me, and he was 1 year older than me. And so if I didn't overcome Doug Stryker, I probably wouldn't have made the team until my senior year. And by that time, who knows, right? I mean, probably another guy behind you pushing you, you know. So we were gone through that year. I lost to Russ Loff early in the year to him, and then he wasn't doing so well. He was winning some, losing some. And Gable put me out there in a dual meet to try to prove myself. I failed again. We went to the national duels, and we split matches. And both matches I wrestled at the national duels, I lost. And it was towards the end of the year, and I asked for another wrestle off, and Gable just said, I can't give it to you. He said, I gave you opportunities, and it didn't happen, right? And I didn't agree with it, but I understood it. Right? And so we're wrestling the University of Wisconsin, and I never told this story for the longest time because it hit me hard. And so we're wrestling the University of Wisconsin. I'm not, because I'm not on the team, but we're in Carver Hawkeye Arena, and after the 150-pound match, after 5 matches, they take an intermission, and the team goes upstairs. Gable says a few words to the group, and you know, it's about a 10-minute intermission. Then they go back down and finish the dual meet. Well, we go upstairs into the wrestling room, and Gable's talking to the team, and then he said, "Hey, who got sick downstairs?" At the bottom of the stairs, someone got sick and threw up. And he said, "Who got sick downstairs?" And Troy raised his hand, and he said, "It was me, coach." And he said, Gable said, "Well, what's wrong?" He said, I don't know. I got the flu or something. I'm just out of it. And Troy didn't look very good. And, you know, it looked like something was wrong. And so Gable looks around the room, and he looks at me, and he goes, "Terry, go pick it up. It's your brother's." And to this day, and I told this story a few years back, and to this day, I don't know if it was just coincidence, like I go pick it up, or if that was the genius of Gable, right? to kick me in the ass a little bit, right? And so I'm down at the bottom of the stairs picking up my brother's puke. And it was one of those moments that probably, like, I look back on it, like probably like Casey Schweitzer's match was my freshman year of high school. It was one of those moments that if I didn't have that moment, I can't honestly say that I'd be in the position I'm in today. You know, and I would have accomplished what I did at Iowa, but I'm at the bottom of the stairs picking up my brother's puke, crying. Tears are coming down my eyes because I couldn't live up to anything. I was trying so hard to be Troy Steiner, but nothing I did added up. And nothing I did, I couldn't add up. I couldn't keep up. And it was one of those moments where, like, I got to just be the best Terry Steiner I can be. Right. And it was a very sobering, humbling moment. But I look back at that moment as probably the catalyst that really pushed me forward. And again, it wasn't that my practices maybe looked so different, but I think there was a little bit more purpose, a little bit more intensity, and a little bit more quit reaching for everyone else, right? Just be yourself, right? And do everything you can do. But it was one of those moments that hit me with a ton of bricks. But again, you thank God for those unanswered prayers, right? I needed that year. I needed another year of development, and I needed a moment like that to put me on the right track. And so, you know, that's just, I always like to talk about it now because I think it's so important in this day and age where everything is right at the push of a button, right? We're mad because our internet isn't fast enough, right? And we're mad because we don't have results at the snap of our fingers, right? And that's not real life, right? Real life is a process. Winning and success is a process. And there's going to be heartbreak along the way. And there's going to be hard times and struggling times and times where you really doubt yourself along the way. And you just have to stay the course, right? And I talk about it now with the Olympic athletes. And, you know, the Olympic champion is not necessarily the best athlete. You know, the Olympic champion is the person that has stayed the course, has fought through the process, right? And not got deterred or not got taken off and distracted along the way, right? And that happens so much in especially, you know, now I'm a 51-year-old person that can talk from this perspective, but when you're an 18-year-old kid, you know, you need to hear that. You know, you need to hear that, yeah, you know, kids they don't even know me now. They don't even remember my name, right? But kids, you know, they look at one thing, they look at that person that's successful, but they don't understand the struggle along the way, right? There's a price for success, right? There's also a price of not reaching for your goals, right? And that's regret. And you don't want that. And so that's the biggest advice I can give to someone is, hey, reach high, right? Go after it. You're never gonna feel bad about the things that you tried to do and didn't happen, right? And so you know, I'm blessed with, I want my daughter, you know, now I look at my daughter and she's at that age, right? I want her to have enough success, enough failure, you know, enough hard times along the way that she keeps pushing, but has some humility built into her too. And so I think it's really important. And yeah. So.
No, perfect. Bill, some more. We're already sitting. That's amazing. We're at an hour and a half. I would have never guessed. That's what's happened here. Terry, awesome. Just Bill.
Yeah, I could listen to Terry all night. I'm right along with Jim Mikowski. I do have a question that, you've now been, kind of seated and seen a lot of interesting and great things. And I'd be curious to hear your impressions and what you've seen with Jordan Burroughs. This is a guy that we've been pretty lucky to watch for the last 8 years wrestling at the international level, and 9 years, I guess, whatever it's been. But just um, watching from afar and being a fan, it's been really fun to watch. But you've been there a little bit closer at all the world championships, the Olympics. I'm sure lots of other places. Give me some impressions there. What you've seen from out of Jordan.
I'll tell you what, probably a lot like you'd expect, right? I mean, just a human being that loves the challenge, right? I mean, look what he's done during COVID, right? I mean, he's putting himself to the test, right? He's not going into the Olympic trials hoping he's ready, right? He's going in knowing he's prepared, right? He's challenged himself against the best, and maybe not at his weight, but at the weights above him, right? So he can get that challenge and not give anything away, right? But he really just, and then again, I see him in the room. We have some conversation, but just a person that's not afraid of a challenge, right? He's a stickler for detail, right? Very detailed, very articulate in what he's doing on that wrestling mat. He can break things down. I've watched him. It's funny because I've watched him. One of our athletes grabbed him last year, I think, and just started asking him questions. And I was just sitting there. It was the end of practice, and I just sat and listened. I never interrupted at all. I never even was a part of it. I was standby on the side and just listening to him break it down and articulate, how he does things on the mat and what he sees in this person and what they could do. Just great to see, and just a giver, right? He's there. He's a team player, right? He's there for the team. He's willing to give his knowledge. He's not hiding things from people. He's all in, right? He's all in, and he's the one that's at the end of practice. He's running the most sprints, right? He's there the extra few minutes, right? Doing the little things right, and so the success he's had is unbelievable, but not when you see him work, right? Not when you see him and what he does, and there's. I love this saying, when someone's looking at Michelangelo's paintings up on the ceiling of the church, and they're looking at it, and they're sitting there and they're saying, like, wow, how beautiful and how wonderful those paintings are. And Michelangelo steps back and he said, if you knew how hard I worked at that, it wouldn't seem wonderful at all. and that's really, I really think that the day-to-day of Jordan Burroughs' life, there's nothing fancy about it, right? It's a grind every day. It's getting up and doing the right things, making the right decisions, living the lifestyle, being the Olympic champion and world champion, multiple world champion like he is. That's not something you do. Right? That's who you are. That's the essence of your being, and that's who he is right now, right? And yet he's so much more. You see him interact with his children. You see him interact with his wife. He's so much more than the elite wrestler. He's an elite human being. Right? He lives his life to the gold standard, and it's no accident, right? It's no accident he's had the success he's had, and I think that it all goes hand in hand. He's lived his life the right way, and it doesn't mean success. Like I said before, it doesn't guarantee anything, right? But he's put himself in the best position for success than most people I've seen. You know, he just does the right things, and he treats people. I've never seen him not treat someone good, and that means, I think, more to me than anything he's ever accomplished. Right? Is how he treats people.
So true. Very good. Well, we had another person pop in just for a few minutes here. We're already past an hour and a half. Tom at a meeting. This is Tom Schoenhard out of Rapid City, South Dakota. He's one of my South Dakota news guys. I don't know the best way to say it, but he's got the scoop what's happening down there. I did invite him to come on just to give us a quick update on how the Rapid City tournament went last weekend. So if you don't mind, let's break away from some of the Terry and go to Tom. Yeah. You missed a great show tonight, Tom.
Yeah, well, I know. I've been we had a state South Dakota Coaches Association meeting for our state kids tournament, and we had some things happening, so I got on that. And hello, everybody. And I saw Terry down at preseason, and didn't talk to him. Obviously, I don't know him, but anyway, Jordan, congratulations on your nomination, and Bill and John. But yeah, the Rapid City invite. We normally have a little over 40 teams out in Rapid, from Bismarck High to all the way down in Nebraska, Wyoming. It's really in Colorado, Windsor, Colorado. We had some kids up that they came back with Milo and Trusty last year. Obviously some really talented wrestling. It's too bad we didn't get to really do it the same way this year. But we ended up running 3 separate pods in the main arena, the Barnett Center, which is a large arena. And then back where they play soccer and basketball and different things, we have a divider that can run down there. So we put 3 mats in those 2 pods, if you will. And we wrestled an 8-man with some pigtails on Friday, basically 3 8-man brackets, 2 varsity and 1 JV, and then 1 girls tournament on Friday, which worked out pretty well. We had about 34 girls, Terry. So that was encouraging and exciting to have their own kind of mat and spotlight and coaching staff, and then on Saturday we went down to from 10 mats we went down to 9, and we just did varsity duels, and we had some A teams wrestle some B teams in South Dakota, which there can be a little bit of disparity between the numbers and etc. But in this year, nobody's saying no, and they took their team, and there were some big scores, but for the most part it went off pretty well. We thought we did a good job. We did hear that there was a few kids that tested this week already that had it. So everybody's kind of, unfortunately in South Dakota, the Activities Association can make recommendations, but each school district and area can have their own, I guess, guidelines on what you have to do if you're a close contact. So that's a little bit messy right now with one of the teams that was there had a few kids test, and so we're kind of sorting that out. But it was our first chance to really get some wrestling in. Some of the best teams in the state were out here for that. They weren't all full strength, but everybody kind of got a chance to wrestle. And outside of a few minor things, we thought it was successful. We got a lot of compliments. We did our best to do our best. And, next year it'll be different, but we pulled it off, and we're supposed to host state this year, so we're hopeful for that. But it was exciting.
You're muted, John.
Sorry about that. I muted myself.
Yeah, no worries.
So my big question was, though, I wanted your main opinion. Now, this is tough maybe on yours because you have a person wrestling in there. But the 3 top teams, Rapid City Stevens, Brandon Valley, and Pierre, were all there.
Correct.
And I don't think everybody was full strength out of any of the teams. But what kind of flavor did you see? How close is that competition going to be come the end of the year?
If
we get there.
Yeah, if we get there.
That's the top.
I mean, Brandon was 3 short. I think Watertown was 5 short. Here was a couple short, maybe 2 or 3. I don't know that we know our lineup yet either from Stevens, but it's going to come down to who's healthy, and bonus points are going to play a huge factor this year, I think. And the duels could they may not follow suit this year. You could have somebody win the duels because there's some deep teams, but the individual side, that we won both last year, but I don't know if that'll happen this year. That's how close it is.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then of course our girls are going to wrestle the individual portion of their own state tournament this year, which is the first year they've done that. They're kind of trying to figure the weight classes out. And as we've gotten more girls that have come out, there's more people that have opinions on having more than 4 weight classes. They're trying to follow what Missouri did, Terry, to see kind of what shakes out. But the pound discrepancy and some of that kind of stuff, some of the moms and dads don't like 15 pounds here or there, and et cetera. And then the girls are also able to wrestle on the dual teams. They're not able to participate in the boys individual because they have a separate girls individual, but they do have an opportunity to participate on the dual teams. We've got one girl on our team, I think, who's nationally ranked. She signed at Life University. And then whether or not she would get a match in the dual tournament, I don't know. But, there are plenty of girls wrestling. It seems to be there's a lot of excited parents there that I haven't seen. The normal dad parents, boy parents that I've seen at tournaments, there's a lot more new parents there. So it was exciting. I think it was new, and so that went pretty well.
Terry, quick question for you. In the states that have sanctioned, what is the typical amount of weight classes for the girls wrestling in high school? Do you know?
It's really different across the board. It's all over the place. But what happened, what he was talking about, like when Missouri sanctioned the sport, they went from like 150 girls. They sanctioned the sport. The next year they had like over 700.
Oh boy.
Unbelievable. Just by sanctioning it was like they opened the gates and the flood came, it was like unbelievable, and I think it's happening in a lot of places like this, when as soon as they sanction it and as soon as they separate it, it's not that, it's not that people are against women's wrestling. They just don't want girls wrestling against boys, right? And so once they separate it, it's the right thing, not only for the girls, but it's the right thing for the boys. Don't put the boys in that situation either. Mm-hmm. It's a lose-lose situation for a boy wrestling a girl, right? And so it helps both aspects when they do finally sanction the sport, and it's so great that it's starting to happen, and hopefully North Dakota jumps in there soon. But I'm glad to see that South Dakota's making those moves. It's great.
Now, I think we could probably use some leadership. Not that the state doesn't know, but we really need some people to step up that have the time to put the effort in to kind of push that stuff forward. Like this is an idea of how we could do it. I think they're kind of at a wait and see, but now that we're past the wait and see, somebody probably needs to take the bull by the horns and say, well, how about this? Or, what do you think of that? And I think that's the stage it feels like we're at. We had a state middle school meeting, and we've done that for 3 years now, middle school state. And one of the discussion points last night was having an extra day, Sunday, maybe be a middle school girls tournament only that next day. Whether or not that takes off and how that works, but we kick that around as well, because we're seeing in some of the smaller towns a few more middle school girls that are participating, those 7th and 8th grade girls. And of course, to get them better and starting them, a little bit younger, obviously, depending on how they go through club, that would be important too, to have that next milestone for them.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. It's awesome to see that. Just the open, the minds are starting to open up a little bit, and open up the idea of girls on the wrestling mat and giving them those opportunities. I mean, it's just, you're helping a whole gender of people for the next generation, right? And giving them a chance in the great sport, right, that we all believe in. So,
yeah. So quick question for you also then. Now this is for Jordan a little bit. What would it take to get women's on television? A little bit more.
Well, and I'll tell you, it was intended to be. We had the deal done with University of Jamestown to televise the national tournament from Jamestown last year. I mean, that was all set. They were a sponsor of ours for the state wrestling tournament. We were locked and loaded to broadcast that tournament, and we're been in discussions with Sean. The intention is to do it this year. So, I mean, we're trying to find a way to be able to bring that a little bit from the scheduling standpoint. So, like I said, last year it was on the docket and COVID pushed it. So this year we're going to cross your fingers and hope we
in
get it done
terms
this
of
year.
streaming, John,
Absolutely.
just to give you an idea, Jody, obviously Brozik came in from the live ticket, set up 10 cameras for the weekend because we limited it to 2 passes per wrestler. And he told me he had 10,000 people log in Friday to watch and 8,000 on Saturday.
Wow. I'm going to have to talk to Jody. I sent him a message because he put something on Dakota Grappler, the message board, and I sent him a message. Can we start bringing some of that to North Dakota? We're going through the National Federation of High School right now, and some people are doing it through track. Some people have their own YouTube channels. I wouldn't mind a little more, how can you say, centric, where people could come to one location and then click from one to the next, especially as a fan, because I'm going all over the place, and I kind of know where most of them are at. So I don't know, making that a little more universal, especially for some of the streaming, would help. And right now, the National Federation of High School Sports for the Bismarck area is not a paid service in Bismarck. We don't have to pay for it. But other places in the state, they have to get a subscription. I kind of like that Jody's doing it free, everything down there, and he gets the advertising from those communities that are doing it and not necessarily for the fans.
And I think he splits that advertising with some of the schools as well.
That's exactly
but yeah, the NFHS, they give a kickback to the association from your state for some of that streaming cost. And it's a cost in South Dakota. But those cameras, when you set up multiple mats, can't pick different mats up. It's more for really basketball or something like that. That's one event, maybe a duel would work well. But yeah, he still does it for free. And I think he's got like 19 people or 29 people working for him now. And a lot of those kids he's training in schools to be able to produce that stuff. And dads that just want to talk wrestling or football or whatever it is, it's really taken off. And it's been pretty amazing and great for, times like these that we're in. We talked last night at our middle school state meeting that we need to stream the middle school state tournament for those grandmas and grandpas that aren't going to be able to be there for a low cost, but just to have that option.
Okay.
So
definitely. And Jody does a good job. I tell you what, he does have some commentators. He did McCook Central last year at Christmas time, and he had cameras set up above top, but then they zoomed down. They had them on each mat. Then he had one commentator, 2 people sitting on chairs, and I came up and visit with them, and they would commentate on every match that's kind of going on over on mat number 1. And it's good enough system where you can click on one camera and it pops that match alone, and then you can click on another one. So I think Jody would be a good resource to really kind of put things together if somebody, wants to get, especially the broadcasting of those events, local.
And I do our duels here, and it's I've had Jody commentate with me. I tried to get Nash Hutmaker's dad to do it with me one night. We dueled Chamberlain. But really, it's just an opportunity to tell about who the kids are, what their record is. You don't have to be an expert and know every move. You just got to kind of tell the story. And people appreciate that. And it gets the kids out there. The parents appreciate it from all over, nephews, nieces, aunts, uncles, whatever. And it's fun. It really is.
Yep. Yeah, Jordan's our technology expert. He's had to set up cameras many, many times. I see him running the cords at the state wrestling tournament, and he's sweating while wearing a suit.
I had that year Barry did the duels with, or did the state championship with me. My folks happened to be down here, and they were at the state tournament, and you obviously have to wait for the 2 mats to get moved, right? So we're waiting for the mats, and we've gotten better at it now, but back then we had to run a lot more cable. We weren't as much wireless as we are now. And so I remember not being dressed yet, still being in blue jeans and a polo and running cables, and they were doing the introduction of Hall of Fame, and they were a little bit ahead of schedule, which they're never ahead of schedule, and they happen to be ahead of schedule. So we're running cables, and we were set to come on the air. So I remember grabbing a stick mic and plugging it into the board in the trailer in the loading bay of the Bismarck Event Center, and my mom is buttoning my shirt as I'm like, "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the state wrestling tournament." So I'm in a stick mic, and my mom is buttoning my shirt and putting my tie on. I'm 20, 29, 28, right? And I'm like, the mic's up here, like, like Buffer trying to announce a boxing match just because we had to come on the air, right? So when you go through that and you see that process, wrestling is a sport from the broadcasting world where, the collegiate duel, it's easy. They go 5, they take a break, they come back, they do 5, we take our minute timeout, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, and we're out in 2 hours, right? But last night we did 5 duels in one gym in Oaks with 2 different mats going. And then you had prelims. So they had prelims they were moving as one match got done. They were moving the prelims over. And I thought the coach did a great job of facilitating that. But it's kind of a crapshoot. I mean, it really is. And people are like, why don't you do more tournaments?
Yeah.
Tell me when the finals are going to start.
Because your TV schedule
could be
is
at
different
1,
than just
could be at
streaming
3,
something.
could be at 2. Well, right. And so from the broadcasting standpoint, you have to establish that time on the TV side to make it work. If you're looking for a stream, you can at least communicate that information and, Facebook and that type of stuff. But from the television, from a statewide broadcast channel standpoint, you can't tell them what time the event's going to happen. I can't give you the airways, right? So even that type of stuff and being able to manipulate makes it difficult. But there's just something about it. I mean, you guys get your rocks off on matches and on duels, but that state tournament guys running back and forth and the podium and the whole works. It's a different monster altogether.
We didn't get to interview, I think, the last couple of years or last year, Jordan, to get the interviews back of the wrestlers right after the match. I remember we did that a couple of years, you and I, and it gets a little bit hassle, but I tell you what, there's such that telling that story, it's so huge and it brings an aspect back to the state wrestling tournament.
Yeah, we've worked with, with the different coaches and different guys. The tough thing that we've run into is trying to get them back, right? I mean, you were there when we were trying to pull them off the podium, and it's kind of gone to a point where the minute they're done and they're off the podium, they're done. I mean, they're out now. Your guys that are going to be in the dual portion that are waiting for that portion of it sticking around, but they're out of there, right? And so you kind of have to play that happy medium of how intrusive do we want to be, how much in their face do we want to get, and then how do you bounce back and forth? I mean, now that we're doing A and B at the same time, the cool thing we've done, which some people would just kind of taking the place of the interviews, is we do what's called a live look-in. So if the B gets done, we don't just go to commercial and wait for 10 minutes. We go to a live look-in, which puts the B in the corner box, and then we put the A in the big box. So some people who are watching the rest and they want to catch everything. They don't want to be flipping back and forth. This gives people the opportunity to catch different things. And you guys do it the same way I do it on the B side, trying to communicate what's happening on the A and who's doing what and who's leading by what. And it's one click back and forth, but there's just so much going on logistically to try to make that whole process work. And it's gotten faster. I think they've gotten better at running the tournament. The finals seem to go a little bit quicker. And so the more they try to speed it up and get people out of the facility and try to wrap it up, the harder it becomes for us. So you kind of try to decide where's your greatest value proposition and where do you try to get what you can. And the whole goal is just to showcase as much as we possibly can, do as many as we can during that that
now,
2 days.
Tell us exactly how you're running it, because you used to have, and maybe it's still the same way, where you're having A going on one channel and B on another channel. Now, are you
correct? Yep. So they're completely independent broadcasts of each other, and then we've gotten to a point where we do use a lot of pan tilt zoom cameras. So different than a traditional broadcast where they would roll in a 53-foot semi or a 20-foot trailer. Everything we're doing is over the fiber optic network of Dakota Carrier Networks. So we actually direct the show in Fargo. Those guys pushing the buttons, switching the cameras. That's all done here in Bismarck. So we send camera ops, we send our talent, but all the camera switching, the graphics, the replay, that's all done at our studios here in Bismarck. So it allows us to have less bodies on site, essentially, and have most of the production done back here. So that signal is traveling the 280 miles from Fargo to Bismarck, and it's crazy because that signal can leave Fargo, get back to Bismarck, be switched, done everything it needs to, and come back to us at the table. And you've seen it; it's less than a second. So that video transfers 500, 600 miles in less than a second to come all the way back through for us to be able to see it in our replay monitor.
Now, the only thing I'd never asked, is this also being streamed at the same time?
Yep. So the difficult part we have is like the Class B duels that we're doing during the regular season, because they're on what we call our Sports Plus network, which isn't available everywhere. We can't stream those because of our exclusivity with our affiliates, basically, who are funding those. And the mechanisms they have. But the state tournament duels are always streamed side by side. Individuals are always streamed side by side. So we always stream those state tournaments. And that's part of our relationship with the NDHSA. And it's always a free stream, not a paid for stream. It's out there, so everybody has access to it.
Okay. Very, very good. Because I tell you what, promoting the sport is part of my life passion, and you do a great job promoting it. That's awesome.
It's an opportunity. I mean, I think everybody looks at what maybe WDAY does or ABC does, and everybody fights over the big tournaments. And we threw our hat in there. We threw our bid in the same way, we always have. And we came up $500,000 short. So when you're competing against the Forum Communications out of Fargo that owns umpteen TV stations, umpteen newspapers, you try to compete, right? But from our standpoint, we have all the tier 2 stuff. We do the football playoffs. We just did all 24 games of state volleyball. We do the dual championships, individual championships of wrestling. So, we kind of let those 3 top tier basketball, hockey, and football championships. That's one contract, and we take everything else. So from our standpoint, I tell people all the time, we're kind of the super Walmart, of sports broadcasting in North Dakota. We're just trying to do as much as we possibly can over the course of that, of that time, right? And we're fairly flexible. I mean, I go back to 2 winters ago, we were supposed to do a basketball broadcast at Shiloh. Bishop Ryan was going to play Shiloh at Shiloh, and they had water on the floor. Well, we had been there, set up, and left. We come back an hour before game time to get ready to go, and everybody standing around with buckets on the floor. And Eric Lee, who was the AD at the time, wrestler at Bishop Ryan, now over at Shiloh. And I said, "What are you going to do?" He goes, "Well, St. Mary's was going to let us come over there." He goes, "What are you going to do?" I go, "We're going to go over there." So we picked our entire broadcast stuff up, put it in the back of pickup trucks because we didn't have our broadcast truck. Everything wasn't there. We hauled it over to St. Mary's, set it up, and we literally were set up completely at Shiloh. We tore down, transferred across town, set back up in 61 minutes. So just having that flexibility and understanding what we're doing in that process is incredibly important. So, you do what you can, right? It's never enough. And you guys know that. Whether you're a coach, it's never enough. When you're a broadcaster, it's never enough. When you're a writer, it's never enough. You just try to figure that process out. But ultimately, we try to put the best product we can on the air and find the right people to broadcast it. And John, you mentioned it earlier, just trying to bring a little bit of excitement. I think sometimes wrestling can be boring, and it can be, we had plenty of matches last night where it's 1-0 and the guys are dancing for 2 minutes. The guys on top and the guy on bottom, both of them are stalling. And I'm waiting for Casey to ding them both. Like, Casey, let's go, and Casey Henderson out of Jamestown, like, let's move this thing, right? But ultimately, when things happen, you try to create excitement. And one thing I always follow as a broadcaster is, if you're broadcast, especially at our level, and I'm not talking about the NCAAs or the big time broadcasters, but from our level, we want to speak to our viewers and we want to speak to the people in North Dakota. So from our standpoint, either the action brings the excitement, or you have to inject the excitement into the action. And so you kind of have to play this little happy medium between both of those things. And when it's important, let it go, let it talk, and let it breathe. And last night, with both of those duels going on at the same time, I mean, you could have heard a pin drop in that place. It was like people were just sitting there on their hands for the first 2 duels while both mats were going. Then all of a sudden, the third or the 5th duel of the day, which is the best duel between Lemoore and Oaks, you're like, where the hell was this the last 2.5 hours? Like, people are excited, they're cheering, and as a broadcaster, you feed off that. So, and you're on your 3rd duel of the day, you're exhausted, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, here we go, right? So, just like an athlete, you try to play off that and figure out how do you deliver it. And the prep work is tough because Josh Hoffman never sends you anything. So all the coaches send me nothing. I've never once gotten a single piece of information from Josh Hoffman. He doesn't know what his lineup is. And then you get the guys that send you 4 pages, right? And so the information is incredibly valuable, and you guys know this just as much as I do. It's sometimes hard to find information. You guys try to put it out, but it's hard to find it. So go through that process and just trying to put the best product you can on the air, and having those lifelong people who are there. I mean, I'll tell one quick story because obviously we're approaching that 2-hour window, but when I was a junior or senior, we went to the Carrington dual tournament. And we were staying, Bishop Ryan was staying with the Carrington folks, and we happened to stay, I want to say his first name was Ryan, but Ryan Zink. We happened to stay at Ryan Zink's house. And so we stayed there, our 89, 215, and myself. We sat there, and Dave and Patty, I think, are his parents. Bill, is that right? Is it Dave and Patty? Jerome and Patty. Okay, so we're having a great conversation while we stayed there, and the next day we come in, we dueled them in the morning. And Mitch Meyer and Zink were set to wrestle the next morning, and they both walk out of the mat and they're getting ready to shake hands. And Ryan says to Mitch, "Hey, did you sleep well?" And Mitch goes, "Yeah, not too bad." And Ryan goes, "It's not going to matter. This is going to be over quick." And he came out and he stuck Mitch in 30 seconds, right? And the ref's just laughing. I don't remember who was officiating, just laughing the entire time, right? So I mean, how do you replicate that, right? You go from staying in the guy's house the night before and his mom feeding you Cheetos at like 10:30 when we should have been in bed to wrestling him the next day and shooting the breeze with him as he sticks you in 30 seconds, So it's just those type of things that, and I've, tell those stories to the guys that are here and they don't get it. None of the guys on my staff wrestled, so they don't get it, but it's just those type of situations and opportunities that you can't replicate. And everybody's got those stories, or stories from every sport, but hockey people, wrestling people, gymnastics people, they're different breeds. They are different groups of people. They think differently because they're not mainstream sports. Everybody can go in and go, oh, put the ball in the net, put the puck in the net, put the football in the end zone, right? Joe Public can understand that and easily translate that to everyday life. People can't translate wrestling. It's hard to translate that. So it's hard for them to get a deeper understanding of truly what it is if you're not a part of it and get enjoyment out of seeing, somebody hit a quick switch, get a reversal with 3 seconds to go. They saw something cool happen. They have no goddamn clue what actually happened, but they saw something cool happen. They saw some fingers in the air, right? I mean, it's like sign language, right? And so just all that thing and that process that you go through and you're a part of it. And just like I told Noah, who was calling the other two duels last night, again, John, you've worked with them. I'm like, just follow the fingers, man. All you got to do is follow the fingers and don't try to sound smarter than you are, right? And he had Logan Sell, like I said, with them, which made a huge difference. But, just those things and being a part of it. And he said it to me as he was walking out today. We had a conversation. He's like, I really enjoyed it. And I'm like, you did? These guys just do it because they have to, right, for the wrestling side. But he's like, I enjoyed it. Logan knew he's talking about, kind of got me a little bit excited. A couple good matches, and you kind of like get into it. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it can be that for people who aren't familiar with that. That can happen, but you have to allow it to happen as opposed to just saying, oh, it's wrestling, whatever, right? So it grows on people for sure, and it's grown on me. And I've had a great opportunity, like I said, to be nominated for the National Wrestling Media Association broadcast of the year. And so it's hard to justify and kind of quantify what you're doing. And then you see things like that and it's like, okay, yep, it makes sense. You're doing it for the right reasons.
No, good guy to have. He did so much last year. Basically, I would say he's so technically strong. That's why I have Bill with me most of the time. I need someone nice and technical and keep things in order, organized. I just like to flow, just whatever comes to my mind. That's so true. Yeah, definitely. Well, we are sitting at 2-hour mark. I still want to ask Terry and Jordan the questions. Tom, you've been around with this. I got my quick fire questions. We're going to end with that. Maybe one last comment from people. But I'm going to ask you guys a couple questions. Terry, you can answer first, and then Jordan answer these questions. Okay? There's just usually one answer questions. If you want to explain it, you can more. Okay, my first question for you guys. Are you Gatorade guy or a Powerade guy? Terry, you're first, and then Jordan.
Neither.
Neither. Water. Straight water.
The heavyweight says Fruit Punch Power and not Powerade Zero.
Okay.
Fruit Punch Red Powerade.
Perfect. This next question is for you, Jordan, here too. Popsicles or dilly bars?
Dilly bars. Absolutely dilly bars.
Okay, Terry?
Yeah, dilly bars for sure.
Okay. Saturdays or Sundays?
Sundays.
Saturdays.
Okay. Best day of the week?
Wednesday. It's all you can eat wing night at B-Dubs.
I would say Friday.
Okay. Mama's boy or rebel?
My mom had the red FBI van if we weren't home in time that she would come looking for us. So I would say mama's boy, because if you knew my dad, you wouldn't want to be anything other than that. So
yeah, I would say mama's boy, probably for the same reason. You don't want the wrath of Lil.
No, not at all. No. Fast paced or consistently slow?
Pontoon, not over speedboat every day. It's comfort over speed for sure.
Well, if I'm talking about now at my age, I make up for my lack of speed with my lack of strength.
Very good. How about your athletes? Do you want them to be more of a mental athlete or physical athlete?
I think mental. I mean, Terry talked about it all day. I quite the same thing to the guys I bring in here. If a guy has the right head and he's in the right headspace, I can get him to be a better broadcaster. If he's not there in the head, he can be the best broadcaster in the world. He's not going to last.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah, mental for sure.
Okay. Favorite holiday?
4th of July.
Christmas.
Okay. Dan Gable or Cale Sanderson? Kind of biased here, Terry. Pretty easy, probably.
Yeah,
I'm a little
I'm gonna
biased.
say Kale because I know what Terry's answer is.
Yeah, I'll be pretty biased, but Kale's a pretty special guy. But I'll have to Gable.
What's interesting is I find 90% of our guests are Dan Gable. I thought maybe Kale would get a few from the younger guys, but still, people know Dan Gable. He's got a good pull. Favorite number?
66.
Football number?
Football number.
37.
Why 37? Is there one, Terry?
I don't know. Just 3 and 7. 3 and 7. Those are
Okay. Very, very good. Usually people go 2 because of takedowns. I don't know. Terry has the century record for most 2-point falls in a season. There we go. I thought maybe 2. Okay. Best wrestler you ever wrestled in high school and college?
I didn't wrestle in college, so that doesn't matter. I'm gonna say probably Doling from Carrington, the older one. He embarrassed me. It's the only time in my career I've ever been tech falled. So that was embarrassing. So probably Doling.
Okay.
Probably Brett Mon for sure. I think he was very, very technical, very tactical. College level, there's a lot of good ones.
Or international stuff you did.
Yeah, college level. Matt Demeray was very tough. Matt Demeray was very, very tough challenge. Right?
Was there an Iowa State wrestler, kind of your nemesis?
Well, yeah. I
know a name.
Yeah, Torrey Jackson was a nemesis, right? And he, he's one of those guys that to this day I thank him because he made me he really brought the best out in me. And if I didn't, he'd kick the tail out of me, which he did a few times, But
did you wrestle him in the Midlands finals?
No, we wrestled a lot.
Was that in Wisconsin? Probably 91.
No, we wrestled a lot of places, but he beat me in the All-Star meet one year. We wrestled my junior year of college, he beat me in the quarterfinals and in overtime. And then we wrestled again for 5th place. And I remember before the match, Coach Gable was just like, it's time to set yourself up for next year. Let's get on the right track, right? And I beat him by 15.
Wow.
It was just, it was just a matter of letting go or holding back, right? And there was a difference in winning and losing. And nothing changed. It was only a day apart, right? And but it was a mindset, right? And it was a huge. And then I wrestled again my senior year in the semifinals.
Yep, I remember it very well. Okay, one last question, and then I've got one more question just for another guest that we had on there. He had asked me to ask you this. Okay, what habits do you have that you learned in wrestling that you still do today? Is there anything that relates to wrestling? Mine is, for an example, I weigh myself still every day pretty much.
Yeah. I would say selective hearing. My grandma, God rest her soul, Irene, I remember being a 7th grader and wrestling in the cafeteria at Bishop Ryan, and I could pick out her voice in a sea of hundreds. I could pick out her voice somehow, some way. So when there's those voices that come, and so selective hearing and being in a gym and being able to pick out certain voices and discern them, I think was one of those things. It's hard when you have 6 holes in each side of your ear to be able to hear anything, and the lady at the top row of the bleachers somehow, some way gets to you better than the guy 6 feet from you.
Yeah.
Probably, I'm a wrestler. I'm probably going to come up and give you a hug rather than shake your hand. It's just something this sport does, and I see myself doing that a lot. And I think especially when you're overseas, that's not so but I do it a lot. And so,
okay. And then one more. I had Randy Lewis on a couple of weeks ago, and Randy Lewis always has got a ton of stories. I tell you what, he was one of the funner interviews we had in here a couple of weeks ago.
I'll bet. Yeah.
But he he sent you a jumping cat that barely jumped. And he sent that to me and said, I just sent this to the Steiners about how Terry looked when he tried to wrestle me in the room. So
yeah, he sent it to me, and I said, yeah, it's pretty accurate, except I said, I think I had more attempts. So, and I'll tell you one last story. So
yes,
it's probably my sophomore year, maybe my junior year, and we're wrestling, and during summer camps we had practices, team practices, and so we had a team practice, and this day I was wrestling Randy, and it was probably my sophomore year, and I'm wrestling Randy, and he's beating the tar out of me, right? And I'm really frustrated. I'm like, what do I need to do? Like, what do I need to do? Like, be my coach, And he's like, you need to shoot more. Well, Randy was leading me right into his weapons, because he was a counter wrestler, right? So yeah, just get to my legs more, for 40 more points, But no, actually, I got one more story with Randy. So NCAA's, it was in 1994. It was a year after I was done. So I was done in 93. 94, we're at NCAA's, we're having a national team practice with Team USA. And we're going matches. And of course, Randy was out the night before having some adult beverages. Right? And so we're wrestling, and the whole day I'm getting the best of him. Like I'm picking him apart because he's like 2 steps off, he's like 1 step behind and 2 steps off. And I'm getting the better of him, and I can tell he's just struggling, right? He's just really struggling. And before the last go, we always had this thing that Randy brought up, like, let's wrestle for the Dakota title. Dakota Cup.
Title.
And so I said, hey, maybe we should go this last one for the Dakota title, because I'm thinking I'm kicking your ass today. And that was like, to this day, he laughs about it. He said, you poked the bear.
Yep. And he said, don't poke the bear.
Yeah. And that last go, I think he scored more points on me than I did the first 6 goes, I mean, I bet he beat me like 30-6 or something, I mean, it was like, it was merciless. And he, after the match, he goes, you shouldn't have said anything. You were having a good day. You shouldn't have said anything. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So, but now Randy was, yeah.
No, he said you were the best wrestler, but the worst athlete. That's what he said that the Steiners might have been the worst athletes, that were the hardest workers, and probably the best wrestlers from that. But he had some great stuff. He did mention the story about he called it the Dakota Cup, or maybe what did he call it, the Cup?
Yeah, Dakota title, I think. Yeah,
Dakota title. Yeah. But he did mention that, and he was very fond of you guys, and he considered you real good friends. And he wanted to come back on. He texted me a couple days later, and he said, hey, you want me on again? But he enjoyed it more than I thought he would, because what's interesting is I got a pretty good field of people I know in the wrestling community, but I'm trying to expand it a little bit. And Randy's finally been kind of on the outskirts. So he's been on Dakota Grappler. He's posted some things. He's always kind of been anonymous, and he likes to really run on his stories. And when you really read into it, and you just put Randy Lewis in one of these spots, it's him, because Randy likes himself a lot, which is pretty cool. we all know that. But his stories, I will go down to the Nationals. I said last week that I'm going to be one of the 100,000 people that have drank a beer with Randy Lewis. I have not yet, and so that will be on my list of to-do things. Okay, well,
he's still from high school duels, John.
Yeah, I'll have to maybe do it there.
He rolls into high school duels just like any other fan.
Yep. And so it's awesome, but just keep expanding your field, guys. Get your view of wrestling huge, because guess what? Shoot for the top. There's nothing worse than having your goals so short and you meet them. and that's where you stop. So I want everybody to realize that they're out there listening. Turn this into a great podcast. Come back and watch us. I just love it, guys. You guys did a great job tonight. Jordan, I want to thank you. Terry, I want to thank you. Bill, all the time. Tom, thanks for giving us some updates. I always like to hear everything you got to say down there. I'll have you on many more times. Sure. But guys, last words from Jordan. I'll get you first, and then we'll go around Terry, Bill, and Tom. So Jordan, last words.
Yeah, I think just obviously thanks for letting me be a part of it, and again, we try to do those things that no one else wants to do, and not a lot of people have the opportunity. So if we can take wrestling and do some duels, I have 4 I'll do back to back tomorrow, along with 3 NDSU duels later in the season. State wrestling coming up. Again, fingers crossed in February. So we're doing as much as we can to try to put those into the homes of the people of North Dakota, and obviously appreciate what you do, John and Bill, with what this is, and just the opportunity to try to make it more every day for the people that don't have the ability to put it in front of their mind. So it's been fun to be a part of, having been a part of wrestling since I was 6 or 7, and not being as being as into it as you guys, but it's fun to get back in, right? I kind of dip out, dip in, to that world. But every time you walk back in that gym, there's just something about the national anthem played last night, and I can't keep my feet still, right? I mean, the national anthem played before the first match, and I couldn't keep my feet still. Still found myself hands behind my back, rocking back and forth, right? And I'm 35 years old, and I wouldn't make the heavyweight division even if I tried. So, so just that experience, that opportunity has been fun. So we appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much, Jordan. Terry.
Hey, just for the coaches out there, just understand the importance of what you do, right? Understand the impact you're making on lives, whether it's good or bad, right? You're impacting lives on a daily basis, whether you're impacting them positively or negatively, and understand that you may be the last person in that kid's life that can really make a difference and really push them in the right direction. So just have a gold medal day every day. Find that passion every day.
Okay, well, thank you again, Terry. Okay, Bill.
Hey, once again, John, thanks for having me on here. It's been a great time, and I looked forward to this all week since Terry said he was going to come on. It's a real treat. So, just keep watching wrestling. We're really at kind of a neat time. There's a lot of wrestling out there to watch that we haven't been able to see in the past. We did get tonight. Kyle Berwick did wrestle in an event in Wisconsin. He did come up a little bit short. Ronna Heaton did have a match, South Dakota gal that won a match over there. So Seth Gross and Thomas Gilman had a match, and I'm not going to tell you who won.
Don't tell me. I haven't got to see.
You guys are going to have to go find it yourself. So, but it's just great to talk about wrestling, right? I've been around for a long time, and I'm just a bigger fan now than I have been at any time. So it's a great time to be a wrestling fan, and just go watch some wrestling. We got a great opportunity to do that now.
Okay, well, thank you again, Bill. Always, Tom.
Well, I said it last year when I was on the show, John. We sometimes in wrestling you got to kind of beat your own drum. We got to promote the sport all individually, any way that you can, whether you're just sharing results or whether you're doing what we did this weekend just to be able to have a tournament for kids. I had a kid come up to me at the end of the tournament from an opposing school and said, "Thank you for having the tournament and all that you did today." And all I did was get water for referees and, help with blood time and, do that stuff. But it's a different deal when a high school kid thanks you for something that you don't know. And I think now more than ever with everything happening, shows like this and things that are out there, we really have the platform. And so the more we can share, the more we can bring people in, and the wrestling families, you talked about it, Jordan. I mean, it's a different breed of people. So keep doing it. And don't be nervous about doing it. Just keep doing it.
For sure. Okay, guys. No, great words of wisdom. I'll cut some clips out, but still looking in next week. I do know I have one guest. I've got Terry Pack coming in from the Legends of Gold down in South Dakota. I'm still going to find a couple other coaches. I've got several leads out there, but just now we got to get some of those fish to bite. I know Jordan loves catching his fish too. But you guys have a great week. We've been on for over 2 hours. Thanks for listening. Some of you guys said this is a long show, but
Thanks,
guess what?
guys.
You will get a ton out of it. I tell you what, there's so much wise words. You listen to this later. Thank you again. Come over to DakotaGrappler.com. I will have this posted on there, on YouTube, and also on the podcast. You guys have a great night. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.